seeing him like this at this time really stands out how different he is now. Not in his policies, but in...
You mean because he's coherent?
Yes.
Wow, we would have never believed this. We're on Spotify, we're on Apple, we're on Google. Go out there and listen to us. So we're excited about it. We're glad you're excited about it too. Relevant rants, because we're going to talk about some relevant things today. We got Scott Garcia.
Hello.
On set with us today,
Yeah,
right?
it's awesome having Scott. Scott's been plugging in with us, doing some stuff with 511. We've been having a lot of fun. Thank you for being here.
I'm so glad to be here.
Joining the team.
Yeah.
We love having you.
Well, you know, I just got to go back and I just got to talk about, and in there again, I think one of my biggest things in the faith is being grateful. One of the things I'm very grateful for is Scott's father, Charlie Garcia.
Amen.
Yeah.
What an amazing man, raised an amazing son, but he also had spiritual he also has spiritual sons.
I mean, you think about, you're talking about him right now. He's been gone in heaven for 18 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I talk about it all the time, though.
Yeah.
You know,
That's a legacy that lives on.
I got a men's retreat to go up to. We're going to be ministering to 500 guys, and then there'll be some Charlie-isms that come out up there. So thank you for allowing.
And as I get older, I'm getting more and more. I laugh like him. I look at pictures. I'm like, I look like my dad.
It's so it's so interesting, Scott, because you and Chuck and Karen and your mother allowed to share your father with the rest of us.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and he raised some awesome kids, and I think a lot of times you see people that are that plugged into ministry and they don't, right?
Yeah.
So he did it well. He did both sides.
Yep.
As we get into this, we can't neglect to bring up Covenant Coffee, our one of our sponsors here.
Yep.
They do a phenomenal job. Scott, you know Randy Martin.
Yeah.
Tom, you know him well. He's been on our show. But the reason that we love Covenant Coffee, first of all, their coffee's great, right? But it's about more than coffee. And if you're watching this, I know you drink coffee. You better go check out Covenant Coffee.
If you don't drink coffee, what's wrong with you?
Right. And Alex is going to have the link up so you guys can go check that out. But Covenant Coffee, if you don't know this, Scott, and if you don't know this watching, what they do is the Covenant Coffee was built specifically to provide jobs to transitional foster youth, because Randy has a lot of group homes and a lot of foster youth he helps out with. In fact, he went into that as full-time vocation because he was previously a pastor. He went into that, and he has hundreds of kids that he's serving, but he saw a big problem and a big need with them coming out of the foster system and not having anywhere to go or anything to do. And my wife and I were sitting in church the other day, and someone was talking about the statistics of foster youth and the incarceration rates, the homelessness rates, the drug abuse, and everything else, because they have no direction. And that's what Covenant Coffee is seeking to do, is give them direction. So that's why we love them.
What's something that's a rant right off the bat is even the fact that Randy went out of the ministry, but he's still pastoring these kids out there. Scott and you and I talked about it just before we came on set. It's about the individual.
It's about the individual. It's doing what the church should be doing.
Yeah.
Like if the church, just to go off on this right now, if the church was doing what Covenant Coffee is doing, if the people of the church was always doing what the Covenant Coffee is doing, there'd be no reason for the government to have to do it for us.
Well, part of the things that the church is supposed to do is train up the people to do the work of the ministry. And as we do that you're going to have more people come up with ideas. Because people are the new platform. People, you're the new pulpit. And I'm not saying it's replacing that. No. But you're out there and people are watching what you're doing. People like Randy Martin are doing something to help a disenfranchised young group. And somebody's got to help these kids be able to be a success in society. You can't just say, "Oh, forget it." Just say there. So Randy's doing something. So thank you.
But I think it's important, if you're watching this show, this is a kind of semi-political or very political show. But we do try to bring Christ into it as much as possible. So we gotta strike a balance in that. But
I think Christ lived in a very political age.
Oh, of course he did. Yeah, absolutely.
And he was survived.
But he didn't bring a political solution.
No. He brought a
he talked about practical solutions. But he didn't hesitate. I even liked John the Baptist when he looked at all the religious leaders and said, "What are you doing here to get baptized? Come back with fruit for your repentance. Show us that your life has changed, and that's going to be the results of God working through somebody's life."
But the point that I was trying to make is if you're out there watching this, and I think Scott had a great point about this, if the church was doing their job, then the government wouldn't have to come in and try to do it. The thing is, the government does this, and it twists the agenda and uses these things as tools against us.
Yeah.
When we could be doing it as a church.
Now we got to back up because I'm still part of the church. So,
I am too.
Yeah, but I'm just saying,
I'm part of the church, right? I'm not saying that, but I'm saying
you and I are both licensed pastors.
We're talking about the institution of organized religion.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Because I think churches that are out there, boots on the ground, that are looking at the people. We're called to take care of the widows, the true widows. We're told to take care of the poor. We're told to keep care of the orphans.
Yeah.
And if you're out there doing that, you're doing it. But there's so many people that just want to play church.
Well,
churches want to play church.
I'm going to share this, list of priorities, and I get this from my pastor who talks with Pastor James Ranger. List of priorities. Amazing man. But a list of priorities for it should be the purposes of God. He likes acronyms. Everything begins with a P on this one. The purposes of God should be top, then the people, then the programs, then the property. The property is there to serve the programs. The programs are there to serve the people. The people are there to serve the process. Purpose. People are there to serve the purpose of God. And what happens is most churches focus so much on the property and the programs, they got it backwards. And he's like, no, we got to start with the purpose. The purpose is make disciples.
One thing we said on this show a lot is, people will say, I need passion. I go, no, you need a purpose. Because you can't just passion doesn't get you anywhere. There's a purpose that you get
passion will send you bouncing off the walls.
Purpose gives you something to get passionate about.
Toddlers have passion.
Yes.
So my whole point in saying that, Tom, was if you're out there watching and you don't like the things that are going on,
get involved.
Do something about it. Get involved.
Do what they do with Covenant Coffee.
Yeah.
Coffee.
Get off the couch and do something about it.
So I love it. Our first article, we talk about Biden's Department of Education. Segregation is sort of okay. Well, you know what they're saying is...
That's a facepalm moment, right? That's a Captain Picard picture.
That makes you think. It makes you tired. But my wife's in public education, and part of the curriculum that's out there, and people are pushing back on it. So they're saying, well, we'll just teach part of this, and we'll have a school with just this race, and that's called segregation. I mean, I think we fought a civil war over this.
Right.
But it's like going backwards.
Yes. And so it's like, this is a program, like you said with church. You can't just come in and teach a program. I wish, and my wife wishes, she's, there again, she's as high a level as you can get in public education. She wishes they would just get back to the reading, writing, and
but can we expect
the 3 R's, reading, writing, arithmetic?
Can we expect a backwards administration to do anything but go backwards?
Well, it's being the educational system is being too politicized. And they're bringing that in there. My wife just goes, my wife has an amazing program. She's going back to New York because the school district adopted some things she was doing here, came out here last year, took it back to New York, invited her back, and she's taking other superintendents back to say, hey, look what we did, what we learned from you.
Well,
and my wife says, what I'm hearing is they took it another level up. I'm looking forward to go back and learning from them.
Yeah, but reality is, like you say, they're politicizing the school system. Like, how far down that rabbit hole do you want to go? Because
let's just keep going.
It was founded on political purposes.
Well, let's keep digging a hole here. We're talking about a threat to parental rights. California controversial school bill sparks outrage. They're talking about limiting parents even more. And when you do this, I don't care what you believe, what race, what spiritual, what faith system you buy into. I don't care what political ideologies you buy into. You don't want to be left in the dark about your kids.
What's also it's a matter of trust.
Yes.
Your government does not trust you.
Yes.
Your government, these people who are making these rules, they don't trust you. They don't trust you as a parent. They don't trust you to teach your kids what they want your kids to learn.
Yeah, but why are we trusting them?
Well, that's the thing. They assume because they've been voted that they have this power to do this. Then we have the power, and you've put us here as politicians to make the decisions for you, and those dumb people who can't be trusted. That's how they see us. Dumb people who can't be trusted.
Well, this new bill SB 596 is going to. It's suggesting that the voice of objection at school board meetings be quieted. And we all know what happened in Loudoun County. The Daily Wire, which is our friends, and the company that my daughter's one of our consultants, Tessa Jimenez, used to be Touchstone, but I love my son-in-law Danny, part of our show, and Tessa. The Daily Wire did an investigation and found out that a parent that was expressing his rights at a Loudoun County School Board meeting was told he was wrong and arrested, and now it's come back and they've proved that he was right, that the transgender female, which is a man, raped his daughter at that school. The school board knew about it, transferred him to another school district, and he did the same thing. And that's all been settled because they actually flipped the state to Republican because they couldn't trust their leadership anymore, because that ideology of that political system was being continued in the educational department.
The idea is to silence those.
Well, that's the whole point.
You need voices
right?
of the parents at the board meeting.
They're trying to avoid another Loudoun County because, if you take away the voice, then you take away their power. And that's the entire foundation of the First Amendment, right? Why did the First Amendment get put in place in the first place? To give people a voice. But why did they want to give people a voice? So they could do exactly what happened in Loudoun County.
And on the other side of that, we have to also make sure that we don't ourselves, when we're making this voice, we don't nullify our own argument by getting physical as this person did. Right. Like everything that this person came to say, as soon as they went, I hate to say the word, but as soon as they went violent and rushed, they just nullified everything that they were trying to say. We got to make sure we don't cross that line.
Well, I think it's important to say that the state this is happening in is California, and Comrade Newsom is able to do this because it's a single party state.
Yeah.
We don't get that blend in there.
But part of the reason taking away the people's voices because they want to maintain that power.
And that's what it's really about, is maintaining power. And so it goes on because California Democrat, they're starting to shred the state's gender policies from keeping parents in the dark because the party is not listening to us. The Democrats are coming out to attack the state's gender policies because they're like, we don't agree with it. So you have your own party group saying we don't agree with it, and they're still not listening to them. It's
tough for any person to step up and say something because they're just going to be labeled as bigots, and nobody wants to be labeled a bigot.
It's interesting. I was called a racist. I've said that on the show. I was called a WASP, white Anglo-Saxon conservative or something like that. And I told them they didn't know much about me because they didn't know my daughter's last name was Jimenez. And I said, if you'd done a little digging, my grandchildren are going to be half Hispanic and half.
We talk about my dad. My dad was fully Mexican. Both of his parents were Mexican. People are like, oh, you're white. I'm like, I'm half Mexican. and it wasn't any white privilege. It was the hard work and good choices of my Mexican immigrant ancestors that got me to where I'm at and got my children to where they're at.
So when somebody just outside, just because you disagree with them, they want to throw a label at you.
And people are afraid of being called bigots. They don't want to step up and say the truth. And that's what's cool about this article. Is like there are people who are now starting to, even people in their own party are saying that.
You know what? I think it's, I just told the person, I go, that's bad. I said, I'm sorry. I go, no, you should have done a little more homework before you just threw that out there because you just wanted to, and it didn't stick. And so I think people have to be respectful of each other.
Absolutely.
And treat each other as human beings and be able to agree to disagree, because that's what made the system great. And that's what's happening to California now. But it's become a one-party state. And so anything that the governor would like to pass is going to happen.
But they're making some progress by pushing back, right? Because you see this article that they just won the $100,000 settlement.
Yes. It's just great because you've got a parent that said, I wasn't told, and their school is unauthorized to do this social transition with my student.
But I think the important point here is the parents stood up, they used their voice, they said something, and so like you do have power. Don't be afraid to use your voice. Don't be violent. I think that's a great point, Scott.
I love that, Scott.
But use your voice.
Then it nullifies your argument.
Right. Be heard. And because we can gain ground by doing that, just as evidenced by this article, $100,000 school settlement, because they didn't like what was going on. So they took it
money
to court.
talks.
And
right.
I tell you what,
they got to pay.
This article, we're being relevant. This article came from a California mother or a California mother. You know, it was living in the state of California, which, hey, I am going to be so excited when people realize that you don't have to be a Democrat or liberal or a conservative and a Republican to care about your kids.
Right.
You would think that like that's a universal thing.
But I do think
how is that not universal?
I do think people outside of California especially have this idea that all Californians are X, Y, and Z, right? Blazing blue, liberal, and the truth is there's a lot, probably I don't know if a lot more, but there's a large percentage of us in the state as well, right?
Well, I've said on the show before, I was a Democrat when I first registered to vote.
And I forgive you for that.
Yep. And because I didn't move, my party left me. Mm-hmm. I'm still the same, but now I look up and I'm like, hey, I'm on the other side now, but I still have my same beliefs. Isn't it interesting? We're talking about, like your Hispanic heritage and my son-in-law's, that it says that there are some Mexican parents that are upset with textbooks that are infected with the virus of communism. They're saying we don't want that in our country. Mm-hmm. And there's a protest against the gender ideology.
And that's in Mexico. That's in Mexico. It's not just Mexican Americans, it's Mexicans in Mexico.
I think that people are just realizing that Scott, we could all agree on this, and I think a lot of people can, that as we go back to Genesis, we see the creation of Adam, who is a male. Yeah. Chromosomes are identifying as a male. So
God made the man and woman.
Yep. And then he made woman, and we see that, and we're always going to go back to that. And whatever you believe in your head just doesn't make it real. And I think that's what the people are saying. Yeah. They're coming against.
But I think it's important that people realize, like, there's a big push by certain segments of our American culture and society that are pushing for socialism and socialist ideologies and all that. But
because they have no sense of history.
They don't. Well, not only that, but like you look at the people, like say like the people in Florida, especially like in Miami area or whatever, Cubans. Right? They're coming in from Cuba and they're like, no, we had enough of that. We don't want no more. Get it away from us. Yeah. Right. But the dummies here that don't have any experience or have any education about it, they're like, oh yeah, let's have more of that. They're like, we had that. No.
Actually, the problem is they've had too much education, the wrong education.
Indoctrination.
Right.
Wow, that's a whole nother subject too. Moving on. It's interesting that California is going to expand a fossil fuel project that Gavin Newsom said he was fully committed.
Does Comrade Gavin know about this?
I don't know, but I love it with the argument that was made, I believe, in a subcommittee that we have here.
EVs are more expensive. This is just a fact. It's the way they're built. It's the way they're processed. So the question is, they're going to be more costly, continuously more costly, as they always will be. So the question is, what benefit do we get from that? Are we saving people's lives by making them spend more on cars?
No.
No. Does the EPA, when you assess, the benefits from emissions from EV vehicles, do you assess the life cycle emissions? Do you take those into account?
No.
From production of everything that goes into it through the sale.
They know about it. They just don't want you to know about it.
Look at that.
Okay. I mean, I know you guys don't. You don't have any reports that.
Mike, you talked over that. Maybe we should let him answer that again.
International Energy Agency did a critical mineral.
You want me to restart it?
Not restart it. Just go back and the guy from EPA says no, we don't.
On average, a single battery for an EV, you have to dig up 500,000 pounds of earth. That involves heavy machinery, oil, gas. And let's not forget, 85% of critical mineral processing is in China. I'm pretty sure their environmental standards are not very high.
They're not.
According to other studies by the manufacturers themselves, like Volvo, like Volkswagen, manufacturing an EV generates 70% more emissions than manufacturing an internal combustion engine. You need to drive 70,000 miles to even break even with an internal combustion engine. Even at 100,000 miles, you're only getting a 20 to 30% reduction in carbon emissions. So it'll do nothing for climate change. It'll do nothing to reduce overall global emissions. And by the way, the EV owner already drives less. So it's unlikely that most of them have even reached the break-even point. So just by the math in the short term, EVs increase emissions globally. That's just the math.
It is the math.
I mean, how many people nowadays drive their cars more than 100,000 miles?
You don't. No. I owned a electric car, all electric. I bit the bullet. What, Mike? 5 years ago?
Yeah, it was
and so I had
a little one, huh?
Yeah, i3.
i3.
And I did it as a favor to my friends that have the car lot, and the idea was, what are these going to be like? Well, it was terrible. I tell people all the time, because there was very few charging stations in town, but that still didn't get rid of charging anxiety. Mm-hmm. It's a real thing, because you don't drive a lot. And now there's another thing stopping people from driving the 70,000 miles: leases.
Yeah. They're leasing their cars, and they
which is 36,000 miles.
Well, if you lease a car, they're going to have low mileage because they want to resell it. Right. And the worst thing with an EV car, and I've been heard this from dealers, is they say don't buy a older car because the battery is going to fail, and it's the most expensive part on the car. So basically, you're going to be buying a new engine, even if you get it at a low price. So there's part of this that doesn't make sense. But I believe that's what pushed Gavin Newsom to maybe going along with this, Mike, to answer your original question, is that he was against it. Well, he might be for it now because EVs don't work.
Well, how many times we had that conversation that like EVs just are problematic across the board for many reasons.
We have to keep having it,
right? Because
they keep pushing it. I mean,
mm-hmm.
Honestly, I love when you watch the cars because I love the way they look. But
I think we
all know that electric trucks don't work because you can't tow anything with them.
I think. Well, and that's the thing is like it's different things. Like if you're just in the city and you're just driving daily in the city and you're going 60 miles in a day, man, it seems to make sense. And if you have solar on your house and you can charge and it just seems like if you have that,
it's a point-to-point vehicle.
It's a point-to-point. It works great, but
it's not a solution for the future.
It's not a solution for the future. It's not a solution for driving around anywhere else.
Solving climate control.
Yeah. It's not any of that. I think it would be an efficient way to travel around.
Well, we also don't have the infrastructure to charge that many electrical vehicles.
But again, I don't want us also to sound like people from 100 years ago. It's like you can't get gas. I mean, when cars first came out, you couldn't get gas anywhere. We're reliving all that. And eventually it came in. Eventually, the EV is going to come in. Eventually, there might even be technology that lets them go more than the 200 or 300 miles that they can go. But the biggest thing is if I'm trying to drive 800 miles in a day, I can go 300 miles in 15 minutes, 10 minutes, ready to go another 300 miles. Yeah, because I just feel
you don't have to go to a charging station and maybe wait 3 hours.
Yeah, and
to get an 80% charge.
Yeah, and that's where technology is now. There's a potential that technology is going to change. I don't want us to look like the people who 100 years ago were like, well, there's no gas stations anywhere. Eventually there will be.
Well, the crazy
thing. But it doesn't change the fact of how much it costs to make this.
Well, I don't think we are, Scott, because we have a solution right now. Hybrid.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We have a solution right now. It's a great solution.
Well,
you just use less fossil fuel to generate electricity.
I can't remember what car company just did. Mazda. Mazda just did this to where when you're driving over, it's EV everywhere until it dies, and then just turns on the combustion engine and drives wherever you want. Yeah. And it's like EV for short trips and everything like that. And then when you want to go a long distance, just
so we have a solution now.
Yeah, that's a great solution.
But it's not cutting fossil fuel off.
Yeah,
it's and I agree with you. You and I love Star Trek and Star Wars, and one day we will have technology.
It'll all be there, but there has to be a trend. Well, again, it's the idea that it can be forced upon by a politician's choice.
Well, this is a subject that we probably didn't decide we're going to breach into, but as we just heard, I think it's Crenshaw, he said that China is not trying to lower emissions.
No.
You look at it, and of course everybody says, well, America be first. Well, we may be last. Well, we don't have any we don't produce fossil fuel anymore. We're sitting on the biggest reserve. China's rolling.
People will say America should lead by example. I think we already are.
Yeah.
I mean, we already are leading by example. There's no reason for us to fall behind in productivity and fall behind trying to be this example that nobody's going to follow.
Yeah, or for an unrealistic.
I would love to at some point get Danny on this show with the conspiracy theories. What's the biggest conspiracy theory about?
I can't do conspiracy
which may
theories.
be true, right? But the biggest conspiracy theory about this whole electric thing is control, right? Yeah. Because they can shut you off at any moment.
Well, it's all technology,
right?
And we've talked about control and power. So as we go on. We got a clip here of our president.
Your president, Tom, not mine.
Well, to be fair, he's the president of the United States. He is our president.
You
have to say that.
And it's
otherwise,
funny,
we're being petty.
It's funny because as we play this, it's almost like he's. The poor guy just doesn't remember, and like you said, Scott, he just lies. It continually lies, and I think I'm sorry. I'm really, really sorry. But if your job is politician, that's what you do. Yes, you do, and you kiss babies.
I'm sorry, all you wonderful politicians, but if you're a politician, I don't think you can get around being hyperbolic, and hyperbole is effectively lying.
Well, so you've got Biden saying something.
Now this is like what 10, 20 years ago.
Yeah, so it
makes a big difference to tell the American people the truth about what our options are in ending this war. If tomorrow the order goes out from I'm President of the United States, I issue an order, end the war today, begin to withdraw all American troops. It will take a year to get the American troops out. Do you hear me now? That's the truth. It will take a year to get them physically out. Now, if you leave all the equipment behind, you might be able to do it in 7 months.
Or a week.
And you leave those billions of dollars of weapons behind, I promise they're going to be used against your grandchild and mine someday.
At some point he knew this.
But not only that, seeing him like this at this time really stands out how different he is now. Not in his policies, but in...
You mean because he's coherent?
Yes.
He's able to stand up without falling down?
I don't want to go too far, but there's definitely a difference.
He was able to stand up without falling down back then.
Well, Mike, as you can pull up the article, I'm going to vote that Alec runs the keyboard from now on. So here we have a current article coming from the Associated Press, if we can believe them, but here it is. Pakistan premier claims U.S. military equipment left behind in Afghanistan is now in militants' hands. Well, hello, he knew it was going to go there.
Yeah. What else is going to happen to it?
Yeah. So, I mean, it just took a while to get to Pakistan.
And that stuff's going to be used for a long time.
Yeah. So as we're out there, I just wish, as we all feel, that there'd be a little more thought put in to the things that really affect our country, our young fighting men. Mm-hmm. I think about your kids, Scott. I think about my son-in-law. Mm-hmm. One of the reasons he, didn't go into the Air Force Academy is, they weren't just sure of the times.
Yeah.
And he went to Fresno State to become an engineer instead. And I think he really wanted to go to the Air Force Academy. But when a young man like that makes a decision, not to go that direction, I mean, we have our country giving the weapons to the bad people
fight them.
To fight them. And it's like you said, it's our grandkids.
And this isn't even you look back, this has happened before when we supported whatever country over that country. I mean, we were fighting our own stuff because we supplied stuff to Iran, then eventually we supplied stuff to Iraq, and then eventually we fought both of them and fought our own stuff. This is not even that. This is literally, we were there and just left our stuff.
Yeah. And it, like he said, he goes, it should take 7 months. But I think we did it in a week or two. But there again, it's just interesting as we're all suffering. Of course, I think our president touts his Bidenomics, which he didn't coin, but he's using. And I think, the people are having questions. Here, we see, there's black political opinion is that Bidenomic, is it working or were we economically better off under Trump? Well, I think you just go to data.
or just obvious experience.
I mean, honestly, if you go out to buy a house now, you're paying more in interest rates,
significantly more,
than you were. So you have to say it's gotten worse.
And not just for any specific race. I mean, it's across the board for
it's everybody.
Right.
Yeah. Everybody.
Well, I think it's interesting that, definitely the media, but just like in general, it feels like everybody's trying to pretend like we're not in the middle of a recession. We're very clearly in the middle of a recession.
Well, people just are paying, and I think the new number is $750 more today, this month, than we did a year ago.
Yeah.
Just to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And I don't think wages went up.
They didn't go up that much.
So I think one of the biggest things, which I don't know how in tune you guys are with this, but one of the biggest things I was talking with my dad the other day about, the recession, are we in a recession? Are we not in a recession? He's like, well, according to the stock market, we're not. I'm like, okay, well, two things. One, you're watching CNBC and they're very clearly telling you a narrative because they're trying to sway the market one way or another based on that. But two, this is my own opinion, but I think it's a valid opinion. I think the big money that controls the stock market is gaslighting everyone. And at some point, the investors are going to get jacked.
Well, there again.
But Wall Street is not Main Street.
No, the
right.
The unemployment rate always should give us an idea who's working and who's not. But
again, any statistic can be swayed to show anything.
It can. But I do believe when you tout something, you probably should do your homework before you do it. But apparently, our president
and most politicians don't.
Let's just say this. So Joe's a busy guy. I think he takes a lot of vacations, but he's a busy guy. So what they tell us, and he should have people give him better information, because the information that he's using can just be looked up, and you can realize that wasn't. Somebody should have looked it up before they wrote it.
And I'm going to play devil's advocate. The previous president would just make it up himself. He didn't need anybody else to. He would just say, "Well, yeah, this."
Well, I think he could have been closer.
His politicians.
I think he could have been closer to the business world because he was a businessman.
Yeah.
And so Joe Biden threw out some statistics which he should have done homework on.
Unemployment rate has been below 14%
unemployment rate
for the last 19 months, the longest stretch in over 50 years.
The graph is showing
we've been there since 1950.
It's always been under 14%.
Right? Not last 19 months.
Well, technically, this is one of the few times that he didn't lie. We have been there for the past 19 months, and the past 19 years, and the past 29 years.
Yeah. He just happened to be a president for the last 19 months.
Right.
So that's all that was important.
Yeah.
But I think you have...
The unemployment rate is below 50%.
Well, I think that's like Scott. You have to be careful with statistics, especially when they're this easy to pull up. So
yeah.
So hey,
but again, he's counting on people having a short memory. He's counting on people just hearing these.
So he's assuming everyone's like him.
Well, no, the people feed off of this hyperbolic junk. So if you can say this crazy thing here, the people, and if somebody agrees with it, if you say something crazy that your side agrees with, they'll just repeat it because they agree with it. Well, it's not Biden only. It's not Democrat only. It's all sides. Well, every side. You just say something, and your base is going to agree.
I agree with Governor Newsom, Comrade Newsom, in this one thing. He says everybody's in their own echo chamber.
Yes,
and I agree with that. But that doesn't mean we should stay there. Yeah. Or
no,
we should. We tell people, hey, you've got to go out there and you've got to be the difference.
Yeah.
You know, not just say and ricochet around. On our show, we try to. There again, I'm not a Trump supporter. I mean, I think the guy's a bully. I think he antagonizes people, but I think his policies work.
His policies work. He as a person just cares more about himself than anybody else.
Well, yeah. I mean, and I think that everybody would agree with that. Yeah. And he's not a moral man.
No.
Not, you hope the ethics are there, but I think business, like Mike and I were talking the other day, most people that are successful in business will have failures along the way, and they learn from failures. So, hey, if you're out there and think we think one way or the other, we're just telling you what's going on in the world. You got to make up on your own decisions on.
But you got to get out of that echo chamber.
You got to get out of the echo chamber.
You got to communicate with people and interact with people who you don't agree with. I
actually like your thought process around this, Scott. Just kind of like sum it up at the end.
Yeah.
Is because I did this for a while, and especially during COVID, like I actually like got too overwhelmed with the news and like all the negativity. I had to turn it off for the longest time. And so you don't even have a TV in your house at all.
So my wife and I have been married for 25 years. When we got married, we agreed we didn't want a TV in our house. So now I do have an 8-foot screen and a projector and a theater system. We watch all the movies we want, and we've always watched movies. My kids have grown up watching movies. Why they got into filmmaking and all that kind of stuff. But we just don't have the news on all the time in our house. And I tell people, turn the news off at least every once in a while. Turn it off. You don't need all of that negativity coming in
because you already have a negative bias.
I just saw this. Okay. I didn't have a chance to research or anything like that. It was just somebody that was saying it's like he didn't believe that human beings have the capacity, mental and psychological capacity, to handle all of this information. That only God, who is omnipotent and omniscient, has the capacity to see everything that's going on. The more information, the more stuff we see, the more we're overwhelmed. Because especially seeing stuff that you can't do anything about, or things that don't actually affect you, and then it's presented to you as though it does. Now you have anxiety over that.
Well, it's because we have a negative bias. Our mind is worried about protecting us.
Yeah.
And so that's why when you see predator tracks in the sand, you're like, whoa. You're saying that's trouble, or trouble was here.
Yeah.
And so that's where it all begins. Is
you have to remember, in the news and in most media, if you're not paying for it, you're not the customer. You're the product. And in news, you're not the customer. You're not consuming anything. You are the product that the news stations are selling to their advertisers. So the news has the news has a vested interest in keeping you hooked, keeping you scared, keeping you anxious, so that you got to keep coming back and get more. I got to know how that ended. I got to know what happened. and they have a vested interest in keeping you hooked so that they can sell you as a product. Yeah, it's a constant cliffhanger. You're not getting resolution from the news. Gosh, please turn it off.
Yeah. So I want to leave
make your decisions objectively.
So I want to leave you guys with a question to wrap up our show. Do you need to stop watching so much news? Stay informed, but do you need to stop watching so much news?
Or even open yourself up to news from the other side.
I always watch the other. I always watch CNN for a good laugh. I try to keep up on my friends that think differently than me. We're still friends.
Yep.
And go on. So challenge yourself.
Yeah. Is that you? Do you need to stop watching so much? Anyway, have a great day. God bless.
God bless.